I would think there would be some overlap and some to and froing in the worldviews about the very nature. You know, is it a lump of meat? Was it a lump? The brain is a lump of meat.
A lump of meat.
Marvin Minsky is that metaphor.
So the discussion over the centuries has been the idea of mind-brain duality, whether the mind comes from a soul or some other external realm. I'm sorry, I was not using the word realm, but somewhere else outside of the brain, or is the mind just a phenomenon of the brain, which Deepak disparagingly called an epiphenomenon. So in science, we don't really know what consciousness is. We don't have a good definition. People study consciousness, and they study it in a very mechanical way, a very specific way. What happens in the brain when we see the color red. And we hope that we can piece it together over decades or centuries and maybe be able to address those questions. But we don't know that. But on a very fundamental level, science does believe that everything in the physical universe follows these laws. We've been doing it for hundreds of years now, and there's thousands of people doing it all the time. We've never observed an exception where the laws of physics that we find, in this case, don't work. And so a physicist, even the spiritual physicist Einstein, who often talked about a kind of pantheistic God, still believes that there's no soul, that there's no free will, that there's no outside guidance or interference or phenomena or anything that makes anything in your mind other than the laws of electricity and magnetism and the usual laws of physics.
That, see, I would say, is the plumbing of consciousness.
Okay, but you can dismiss it as the plumbing, but
there's more to dismiss it.
The key point here, though, the key point is, if there's more than just plumbing, and I don't know what it is, is the brain being directed by something else, or is it? It's like a yes or no question, and scientist says no.
I mean, that thing, what's that line, do you believe in free will? And the answer is, I have no choice.
That's a good one. And that, by the way, I believe that. Because that's an important point, because even though I say there's no free will, it doesn't mean I don't feel free will, but when I have a choice, if I walk in front of the truck, I don't say, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter, I have no free will anyway. So as a being who can't solve all the equations and figure out exactly what's going to happen in the future, I don't know what I'm going to do, but whatever it is, there's an effective theory that I have of myself called psychology, which involves free will. I mean, on the level of what I can experience, there is free will. What I'm saying is on a fundamental level of the atoms and molecules, there is no free will. But it's kind of irrelevant because we can never get it. That's too complicated. So
there are some very interesting developments in neuroscience right now. Neuroplasticity is one of them, which means by changing your habits of thinking and behavior and feeling, you can actually change the neural representations in your brain. So right now, as we're having an intellectual conversation and you're trying to figure this out and reflecting, your frontal cortex is being activated. If you were having an emotional dialogue with someone who said, I love you, and you were in love with that person, your limbic system would get activated. But if the same person said, I love you, and you were thinking of divorcing them, even though the sentence was exactly the same, the vibration and the eardrum and the electricity that went to the brain was different, the context and meaning was processed in a different way, you have a completely different biological response. Your blood pressure might go up, your platelets might get jittery, and some of the adrenaline go up. Where is meaning processed? Can meaning be processed in a mechanical system? That's a big fundamental question. It's the same sentence, the same mechanical vibration, and the same electrical impulse. So neuroplastic, somebody is threatening you, then your reptilian brain gets activated. And now there's work in neuroscience that says through just mental activity, you can change the neural networks of your brain. And when you change the neural networks of your brain, you actually have to make protein in in order to make protein, you have to turn on genes that go through the process of transcription and translation. But I have checked personally with neuroscientists, this happens in microseconds. Okay, there's a paper published by Elizabeth Blackburn, who got the Nobel Prize in the year 2009 or 2008 for originally discovering the enzyme called telomerase, which influences the length of the telomeres. She shows a 30% increase in practicing monks, practice internal work. We're trying to validate that in the second study, and there are problems when you do these studies, controls. It's very difficult to design a perfect study, but there seems to be a lot of new information on what is called genetic indeterminism. That you can turn your genes on and off by the way you live your life. You can have two identical twins, and by the time they are 20, they have a completely different expression of their genome. So what I'm saying is that mental activity can change brain activity. But at the same time, I'm not a dualist. You see, nor is he a dualist. He's a non-dualist who says matter is the only reality, and I'm a non-dualist who says consciousness is the only reality. Our mental experiences are representations of consciousness, and the physical world is also a representation.
I don't want to put words in Leonard's mouth, but I would defend Leonard in this line is that he would say that it's the only reality when we're doing science.
Yes.
It's not the only reality, period. There are many other things we've talked about. Poetry, one of the big questions, and I think involves us all, is that we're living in a very messy, dangerous culture, world culture as well as our own, where there is, I think, an undertone of nihilism. And it's an interesting thing to me. I was reading that the Centre of Epidemiology at the Australian National University has identified a new epidemic. Remember, this is a centre of epidemiology, science, and it's an epidemic of meaninglessness.
Is that new?
It's according to the Australian National University, it's
it used to be that way.
The intensity is new, but it's an epidemic. It's a pandemic. I mean, is that